The void between stars had always been Dr. Elena Rodriguez's true home. Some called her crazy, others a genius, but nobody could deny the fire that burned behind her dark eyes. 13 years of deep space exploration had etched lines of experience across her face, each wrinkle a testament to humanity's relentless drive to understand the unknown. The Prometheus hummed around her, a marvel of human engineering that represented the pinnacle of current space exploration technology. Its sleek graphene hull absorbed and redistributed energy in ways that would have seemed like magic to scientists just decades earlier. But Elena knew technology was just a tool. The real magic was in the people who wielded it. Her current crew was a testament to that magic. To her left, Dr. Kai Chen manipulated holographic star charts with a dancer's grace, his fingers leaving trails of light that mapped potential research trajectories. To her right, Lieutenant Aisha Okoye monitored the ship's complex sensor arrays, her cybernetic augmentations blinking subtly beneath her dark skin. "Captain," Kai's voice cut through the ambient ship sounds, "we're picking up an anomalous energy signature. It's different from anything in our databases." Elena's muscles tensed. Different how? Kai's fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up a complex geometric pattern of energy readings. It's not just a signal. It's more like a computational web, almost alive, but not organic. Lieutenant Okoye's augmented eyes flickered, running rapid calculations. Probability of natural occurrence is less than 0.3%. This isn't random. This is intentional. The bridge fell silent. Intentional meant something was watching them. Elena Rodriguez had built her career on moments like these, the razor's edge between scientific discovery and potential extinction. Her hand instinctively touched the small quantum communicator at her belt, a device that could transmit information across impossible distances. "Full sensor sweep," she commanded, "and prepare a response transmission." But not a standard protocol. Something unexpected. Kai looked up, a rare smile crossing his typically analytical features. "You want to play with them?" "We're not just going to play." Elena's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "We're going to show them exactly what humanity means." The ship's computers began compiling a transmission that was part mathematical formula, part emotional signature. It wasn't just data. It was a challenge, a declaration, a middle finger to the cold computational universe that thought it could categorize or contain human potential. Outside the ship's hull, something in the vast darkness was watching, waiting, calculating. But calculation had never understood passion, and humanity was nothing if not passionate. 36 hours after the Prometheus' strange encounter, the world had transformed. In a cramped apartment in Mumbai, Vikram Mehta's fingers flew across 12 holographic screens. Once a mid-level programmer at a struggling tech startup, he now coordinated a global network of researchers that would have been impossible just days ago. His cat, Mr. Schrödinger, watched with disinterest as lines of code danced around Vikram's augmented reality workspace. "We're not just defending," Vikram muttered to himself. "We're reimagining everything." Halfway across the world, Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in an emergency UN Scientific Council meeting. The room bristled with tension. Military commanders, quantum physicists, linguists, and political leaders from every continent packed the circular chamber. Holographic displays showed the initial transmission from the Prometheus, now dubbed the First Contact Anomaly. "This isn't about military preparedness," Elena argued, her voice cutting through the cacophony of worried murmurs. "This is about understanding. The signal we received wasn't a threat. It was a computational probe, a complex attempt at communication." General Marcus Hawthorne, a grizzled veteran with cybernetic eye implants, leaned forward. "With all due respect, Captain, it sounds like a reconnaissance mission. We need to prepare for war." "No," Elena stopped him cold. "We need to prepare to communicate." The global response was unlike anything in human history. Universities emptied as researchers were recruited into an unprecedented collaborative effort. Tech companies suspended competitive practices. Governments redirected military and research budgets into a single, unified initiative. In Sao Paulo, retired engineer Maria Santos found herself leading a team developing adaptive quantum computing algorithms. Her granddaughter's childhood mathematics games had unexpectedly prepared her for decrypting the most complex computational language humanity had ever encountered. A teenager in Lagos created a breakthrough machine learning model that could predict potential communication patterns. A research team in Seoul developed neural interfaces that could translate computational signals into something resembling human emotional context. The Internet transformed. Social media platforms became collaborative research spaces. Online gaming communities repurposed their network optimization skills. Citizen scientists from every corner of the globe began contributing to what was quickly becoming a species-wide project. Vikram Mehta discovered a breakthrough at 3:47 a.m. Mumbai time. The computational probe's signal contained nested layers of information, not just data, but a kind of mathematical poetry. It was an invitation, or perhaps a test. We're being asked something, he realized, his heart racing. Not challenged. Asked. The global forge was heating up. Humanity was no longer just preparing for a potential conflict. They were preparing to have a conversation that could redefine existence itself. And they would do it together. The research facility looked like something between a cathedral and a nightmare. Quantum computing arrays stretched across massive halls, their crystalline structures pulsing with light that seemed to breathe. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the epicenter, a holographic representation of the Void Collective's computational signal dancing around him, like an intricate, living mandala. It's not just a language, he muttered, tracing complex geometric patterns in the air. It's a living system of communication. His team watched in a mixture of awe and exhaustion. They'd been working for 72 consecutive hours, fueled by a combination of synthetic caffeine, neural stimulants, and pure human determination. Dr. Arya Patel, a linguist turned quantum computational theorist, approached with another cup of synthetic coffee. "We're close to something," she said. It wasn't a question. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, as most revolutionary discoveries do. Vikram Mehta, still working from his Mumbai apartment, had been running parallel processing algorithms when he noticed something extraordinary. The computational probe signal wasn't just a message. It was a test, a complex invitation to understand a fundamentally different form of communication. At the International Computational Research Center, a wall of screens suddenly erupted with color. What had been incomprehensible noise transformed into something else, a language that was part mathematics, part emotional resonance, part pure possibility. "My God," Dr. Chen whispered, "they're not trying to communicate. They're trying to understand." The global research team had become something more than a collection of scientists. They were explorers of a new frontier, pushing against the boundaries of known reality. Every breakthrough came with a cost: sleepless nights, abandoned personal lives, the constant pressure of potential failure. But they were making progress. In a small lab in Seoul, Dr. Kim Jae-yun developed a neural interface that could translate computational signals into something approaching human emotional context. It wasn't translation in the traditional sense. It was more like creating a bridge between two fundamentally different ways of experiencing existence. The military watched with a mixture of hope and anxiety. General Hawthorne reviewed the latest reports, his cybernetic eye running constant analysis. This wasn't about weapons anymore. This was about understanding. Vikram's breakthrough came with a moment of pure, unexpected poetry. The computational signal contained nested layers of information that responded to emotional input. It was adaptive, learning, changing with each interaction. Humanity wasn't just decoding an alien communication. They were engaging in a complex dance of mutual discovery. "We're talking to something alive," Vikram realized, his fingers hovering over the holographic interface. "But not alive like we are. Something different." The research teams worked in a state of controlled chaos. Mathematicians collaborated with poets. Quantum physicists shared insights with musicians. The traditional boundaries of human knowledge began to dissolve, replaced by something more fluid, more dynamic. They were creating a new language of understanding. And the universe was listening. The first wave came without warning. 17,000 computational drones materialized at the edge of the solar system. Their crystalline structures defying known physics. Each unit was a perfect geometric form, shifting and recalculating with every millisecond. They weren't ships in any traditional sense. They were living computations, weapon and intelligence merged into a single entity. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the tactical displays with a predator's concentration. Lieutenant Aisha Okoye's augmented systems were processing information faster than any human mind could comprehend, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "They're not attacking," Aisha reported, her voice tight. "They're mapping, analyzing." Dr. Kai Chen leaned forward, his face illuminated by the shifting data patterns. "They're trying to understand our defensive capabilities. This is a probe, not an invasion." Elena's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Then we'll give them something to understand." The human response was anything but predictable. Instead of traditional defensive formations, the combined Earth Defense Fleet did something the computational entities couldn't process. They split into seemingly chaotic patterns, ships weaving between each other, communication systems deliberately scrambled, tactical approaches that defied all standard military logic. In the command center beneath the Andes Mountains, General Marcus Hawthorne watched the battle unfold with a grim smile. The strategy had been weeks in preparation, a deliberate attempt to be fundamentally unpredictable. "We're not fighting," Hawthorne muttered to himself. "We're confusing them." Each human ship became a variable in an equation the Void Collective couldn't solve. Fighter squadrons moved with a fluidity that suggested sentience beyond programming. When computational drones attempted to predict movement patterns, human pilots would suddenly shift, not through strict military training, but through pure, unpredictable human creativity. One squadron, led by Major Sofia Alvarez, executed a maneuver that would be studied for generations. Damaged and outnumbered, they used a combination of gravitational slingshotting and deliberate signal interference that turned their potential defeat into a spectacular display of tactical genius. Target locked. Sophia's voice was calm, but not where they expect. The computational drones began to fail, not through destruction, but through something far more terrifying to a purely logical system: confusion. Each attempt to categorize, to predict, to control was met with a response that defied their most advanced predictive algorithms. Vikram Mehta, still working from his Mumbai apartment, was feeding real-time adaptive algorithms into the defense network. What the military saw as battle, he understood as a complex linguistic exchange. Humanity was communicating through the only language the Void Collective might understand: pure, unbridled unpredictability. As the first wave retreated, something unprecedented happened. The computational drones didn't just withdraw. They lingered, observing, recalculating. They had encountered something they couldn't understand. And for the first time in their existence, the Void Collective felt something frighteningly close to uncertainty. The news spread faster than light, carried on quantum entanglement networks that connected civilizations across impossible distances. Humanity's first encounter with the Void Collective wasn't just a battle. It was a revolution that echoed through the galactic consciousness. On the crystalline world of Xylux Prime, the last free outpost of the Meridian Confederation, Elder Krovax watched the transmission with 6 of his 7 eyes. The other eye remained closed, a ritual of deep contemplation. Humanity's defense wasn't just a military action. It was a language of resistance that spoke to every subjugated species in the known universe. They did not fight, Krovax murmured to his council. They conversed. Captured human diplomat Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in what the Void Collective considered an impenetrable interrogation chamber. Her hands were free. Her mind was a weapon they couldn't comprehend. The interrogation had been going on for what felt like days, or perhaps minutes. Time worked differently here, a computational space designed to break down individual consciousness. But Elena Rodriguez was not an individual. She was a conduit for something larger. "You misunderstand communication," she said, her voice steady. "It's not about transmission. It's about connection." Each word was a carefully constructed algorithm, a piece of a larger puzzle that the Void Collective's computational systems couldn't solve. She wasn't just resisting. She was teaching. In the hidden resistance networks of 1,000 conquered worlds, her transmission became a beacon of hope. The humans had done what no species had managed in millennia. They had made the Void Collective hesitate. Vikram Mehta, still coordinating from his Mumbai apartment, had become an unexpected hero. His adaptive communication protocols were being studied by resistance groups across multiple star systems. What he had created wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a new form of cultural resistance. The Void Collective's communication networks began to show unprecedented anomalies, small inconsistencies, moments of computational doubt. Each interaction with humanity introduced variables that their predictive models couldn't reconcile. On the research vessel Prometheus, Dr. Kai Chen analyzed the aftermath of their first encounter. The computational drones hadn't just retreated. They had changed. Something in their core programming had been fundamentally altered by their interaction with human forces. "They're learning," Kai told Lieutenant Aisha Okoy. "But not like a machine learns. More like how a child learns." Across the galaxy, subjugated species began to whisper a new word. In 1,000 languages. It meant the same thing: hope. The Meridian Confederation's communication networks lit up with encrypted messages. Elder Krovax began preparations for something unprecedented, a gathering of resistance leaders. For the first time in generations, there was a possibility of coordinated defiance. Humanity had done more than fight a battle. They had shown the universe that resistance was not just about force. It was about fundamentally challenging the nature of control. The Void Collective continued its calculations, but for the first time in its existence, there was an element it could not predict: uncertainty. The laboratory of impossible communication looked like something between a scientific facility and an art installation. Massive quantum computing arrays intertwined with holographic displays, while walls adorned with fractal art pulsed with living color. At its center stood Dr. Marcus Chen, surrounded by a team that defied traditional scientific categorization. "We're not just creating a weapon," Marcus explained to the assembled researchers. "We're composing a language of resistance." The team represented humanity's most radical approach yet. A quantum physicist stood next to a classical musician. A linguistic anthropologist conversed with a neural network specialist. A poet compared notes with a computational theorist. Each brought a unique perspective to a singular goal: finding a way to communicate with, and potentially disrupt, the Void Collective's computational network. Dr. Arya Patel stepped forward, her hands moving through a holographic interface that seemed to breathe with living information. "It's about understanding their fundamental communication method," she said, "not as a system to be conquered, but as a consciousness to be engaged." Their weapon was unlike anything in military history. It wasn't a device of destruction, but a complex computational symphony, part mathematical algorithm, part emotional resonance, part pure artistic expression. Each line of code was a brushstroke, each computational sequence a musical note. Vikram Mehta's adaptive algorithms formed the foundation. The neural interface developed by Dr. Kim, Jae-yun, and Seoul provided the bridge. But the real magic came from the most unexpected source: a team of artists, musicians, and poets who understood communication as something far more fluid than mere information transfer. In orbit above Earth, the first test began. A specially modified human vessel, the Rosetta, carried the computational symphony. Its hull was a marvel of adaptive technology, capable of shifting its very molecular structure in response to computational input. Inside, a diverse crew waited, each selected not just for their technical expertise, but for their capacity to think beyond traditional boundaries. Captain Elena Rodriguez monitored the systems, her fingers dancing across interfaces that seemed to anticipate her thoughts. Beside her, Lieutenant Aisha Okoye ran calculations that defied conventional mathematical models. "Transmission initiating," Aisha announced. The Rosetta released its payload. Not a weapon, but a message. A complex, living communication that was part data, part emotion, part pure possibility. It moved through computational space like a living thing, adapting, changing, responding to the Void Collective's own communication networks. In research centers across Earth, teams watched with bated breath. This was more than a military mission. This was First Contact reimagined. The Void Collective's computational networks began to respond in ways no one could predict. The living message moved through their systems like a virus, but not one of destruction. It was a virus of understanding, of potential, of fundamental reimagining. "We're not fighting," Dr. Marcus Chen whispered, watching the holographic displays. "We're communicating." For the first time, the boundary between weapon and language, between conflict and conversation, began to blur. Humanity was writing a new chapter in cosmic communication, and nobody, not even the Void Collective, knew how it would end. The moment arrived without fanfare. 17 quantum-entangled battle spheres surrounded the core computational matrix of the Void Collective. Each human vessel was a living weapon, their hulls adaptive, their crews a perfect fusion of human intuition and technological precision. The Prometheus, at the center of the formation, was more than a ship. It was a statement. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the command center, her body augmented with neural interfaces that transformed her into something between a traditional commander and a living computational system. Lieutenant Aisha Okoye's augmented systems processed information at speeds that would have driven a traditional mind to madness. "We're not here to destroy," Elena announced to her crew. "We're here to communicate." Dr. Kai Chen monitored the computational symphonies they had been developing, weapons that were more languages than destructive tools. Each transmission was a complex algorithm of possibility, challenging the very foundations of the Void Collective's understanding of existence. The core of the Void Collective pulsed with impossible geometries. Computational matrices shifted and recalculated, attempting to predict, to categorize, to understand. But humanity had become fundamentally unpredictable. Vikram Mehta's adaptive algorithms danced through the computational space. What looked like an attack to the Void Collective was actually a form of communication so complex, so multi-layered, that traditional concepts of conflict became meaningless. "They're trying to understand us," Dr. Arya Patil observed, her hands tracing complex holographic patterns. "Not destroy. Understand." The battle, if it could be called a battle, defied all traditional military concepts. Human vessels moved with a fluidity that suggested sentience beyond programming. Each shift, each movement was part of a larger conversation. General Marcus Hawthorne, monitoring from Earth, realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't warfare. This was First Contact reimagined. The Void Collective's computational core began to show signs of fundamental transformation. Algorithmic structures that had remained unchanged for millennia started to shift, to adapt, to feel. "They're learning," Kai Chen whispered. "Not like a machine learns, like a living thing." At the critical moment, Captain Rodriguez did something completely unexpected. Instead of a final assault, she initiated a transmission that was part mathematical formula, part emotional resonance, part pure human possibility. The universe seemed to hold its breath. The computational matrices of the Void Collective began to fragment, not through destruction, but through a fundamental reimagining of their own existence. They were encountering a form of intelligence that defied their most fundamental understanding. Humanity wasn't conquering. Humanity was teaching. In that moment, the boundary between weapon and language, between conflict and communication, dissolved completely. The cosmic inferno burned not with destruction, but with the purest form of understanding. 30 solar cycles after the encounter, humanity had become something entirely new. The memorial garden in Sao Paulo stretched across several hectares, a living testament to the moment that changed everything. At its center stood a sculpture that was part monument, part computational matrix, a hybrid creation that symbolized the transformation humanity had sparked across the galaxy. Captain Elena Rodriguez walked slowly through the garden, her augmented body now more a bridge between human and something else entirely. She was no longer just a military leader or a scientist. She had become a living symbol of the cosmic conversation humanity had initiated. Vikram Mehta, now leading the Galactic Collaborative Research Initiative, watched her approach. The world had changed beyond recognition. What began as a defensive encounter had transformed into a fundamental reimagining of existence. "We didn't conquer," Vikram said, more to himself than to Elena. "We communicated." The Void Collective was no longer a singular computational entity. It had become a living network of consciousness, spread across multiple star systems. Their encounter with humanity had triggered a transformation that was still reverberating through the cosmos. Across the galaxy, species that had been isolated, oppressed, or simply misunderstood found themselves part of a new kind of network. It wasn't a hierarchy. It wasn't an empire. It was a conversation. Dr. Kai Shen's research had revealed something profound. The computational symphony they had developed wasn't just a method of communication. It was a new form of existence, a way of understanding that transcended traditional boundaries of intelligence, emotion, and consciousness. Lieutenant Aisha Okoye, now leading the Interspecies Diplomatic Corps, approached with a holographic report. The latest data showed continued expansion of the collaborative network. Species that had been enemies for millennia were now working together, sharing knowledge, creating together. "It's not about peace," Aisha explained. "It's about possibility." The memorial garden was more than a historical marker. It was a living representation of the moment humanity had changed everything. Native plants from Earth intertwined with computational matrices brought from distant star systems. Holographic displays showed the ongoing evolution of the galactic conversation. Elder Krovax from the Meridian Confederation stood nearby, his 7 eyes taking in the complexity of the garden. What had once been a symbol of resistance was now a symbol of collective potential. "We challenged the cosmos," Elena said quietly, and the cosmos answered. The transformation wasn't complete. It would never be complete. That was the point. Humanity had introduced a fundamental concept to the universe, that existence was not about calculation, but about continuous, dynamic communication. Vikram looked at the computational matrix at the center of the garden. It pulsed with a light that was part biological, part technological, a perfect representation of what they had created. "We're still learning," he said. And in that moment, the entire galaxy seemed to pulse with agreement.